Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Right now, finally, it's time for the top 10 mutants in MCOC. Before I get any further, I do want to emphasize that this is list that I'm trying to make as a mixture based on my own opinion and also my observations about top metagame. However, it by no means is any sort of Bible. Also, ranking up champions based on arbitrary numbers somebody assigns them on YouTube is not the right approach. You should always be focusing on ranking up the champion that helps you get where you are trying to go. As in, if you need a champion for a specific variant, then rank a champion for that specific variant. Because once you complete that challenge, you can get more rank up resources and you're going to have to make this decision again. And that is how you progress in the game fastest and in the best way possible, not ranking up champions that seem the best or are the flashiest. All that being said, just a reminder that champions that are not available as 6 stars are not included in these rankings. So as far as Mutant Class is concerned, there is hardly any effect, as in like we can't include OG Wolverine, but he wouldn't have made that list regardless. And I must say that Mutant Class was extremely difficult to rank. And in fact, I would kind of want to make two lists for them because I think the top 6 champions in Mutant Class right now have much more significant barrier in between, let's say, 7th spot, then 7th spot would be 14th or 15th or something like that. I'm trying to say that I do believe that there are 6 mutant champions in the game that stand quite significantly in front of most others there, and whatever happens below that top 6 is much more open to interpretation and it's much closer. So even if your favorite mutant does not make in this list, which obviously there will be some of those, can't please always everybody, nor I will attempt to try, then please keep in mind the idea that I do value those champions regardless. There are champions that I absolutely personally love that did not make this list, because I am not making these lists just based on my personal opinion, but also on what we can see in top tier alliance quests, in top tier alliance wars, which champions are more useful in the hardest content in the game, such as Abyss, such as Grandmaster's Gauntlet 7.2, and all that stuff gets mixed, bundled together, and these are the conclusions that I arrived to. Can't ignore the element of my own subjective judgment there as well. That being said, one of said champions, for instance, is Emma Frost. Emma Frost has always made it to my personal top 10 lists, and this is the first time when she will not do so. Not because I don't like her or I think her value has fallen. I still absolutely love that champion. I wish I did rank up Emma Frost over Domino back when I had that choice to make, but I didn't. And that is something that I have to deal with, and I'm more than likely going to rank up Emma Frost at some point in future as a 6-star rank 3 as well. But she didn't quite make it. Speaking of champions that didn't quite make it, there we have Gambit. Gambit has been proving himself to be quite broken and quite useful in plenty of situations, and I definitely can understand why many people do like this champion a lot. Besides Gambit, we obviously have the Domino fan club. I do not think she is top 10 mutant. If you do, that once again is perfectly fine. I'm not trying to insult your family's honor. I have a 6-star rank 3. I have a rank 5 5-star. I do use her here and there, but she definitely has much more limitations than many of the champions ahead of her, even though if stars align, she can produce some insane results. And another couple of champions that most people will expect to see in the top 10, I suppose, but they are not there, is for instance Sunspot. Sunspot was very close to making it there. Storm Pyramid X is another fantastic champion that I really like, and I want to look more into her, and I want to get her up to a rank 2 at least at some point, just so I have more first-hand gameplay experience with her. Her abilities her abilities to punish opponents for shrugging off her stuns are seeming to be more and more useful, plus her immunities and everything else that she does. So she's a champion that I value and I want to look more into, but I didn't place her in top 10. And perhaps the bigger shock for many, if not most, would be that I didn't place Strife in top 10 either. Because Strife is a great champion in many aspects on paper, but overall, he hasn't really had much of an impact on any sort of competitive game. And I think the entire ramp up process and the reliance and synergies and whatever Strife does for anyone can be done better by many other champions. I don't think Strife is a bad champion by any means. He can produce great results. I just don't think that he has had any relevance, and that might change. Maybe in near future he's going to be the top alliance war option or something, even though I personally don't see it. I can understand why, and the fact that many people do love Strife. I'm personally not one of them, but it's also not because of that that I'm not placing him in top 10. It's mainly because of the fact that we hardly see him anywhere. People like to love Strife. He was the next Mutant Aegon, the craziest, bestest thing ever. But then all that hype kind of died, and initially everybody had the excuse of, well, not everybody has Strife, or he's a brand new champion. Well, now Strife is in featured 5-star, now Strife is in featured 6-star, a ton more champions, a ton more people do have access to him, and he's soon to set enter the basic pools. I think he's already in basic 5-star pool, and gonna enter basic 6-star pool within a month. But so far, haven't seen many headlines featuring Strife. Right. That being said, let's go to spot number 10. And again, keep in mind that spot number 10 could have easily went to any of the champions that I mentioned right here, right now, already. Because there really isn't that much difference in my personal opinion. But spot number 10 goes Havok. Havok still continues to be one of those champions that is far more versatile than many people realize. Partially due to happenstance and partially due to kind of like small niche nuances. For instance, one of the things that people don't realize about Havok is that he gains his plasma charges every single time he takes energy damage, and that also includes block damage. And with more and more champions having energy-based attacks, it means more and more champions, Havok gains advantages matchup against. Effectively, you can kind of replace Wasp's energy in its own kit, but just by parrying Dormammu, for instance, you gain a charge automatically, thus helping you ramp up significantly quicker. There's also the misconception that you need to build your level 3s in order to do damage. In fact, he has Void-like ability to do a ton of damage based on the plasma charge that he has on the opponent, which is in many cases the most effective way to play him. Drop a level 1 quickly, let charges build up an opponent, and then manage the charges and let them stay there for significant amount of time just by spamming your heavy attacks. On top of that, another thing that definitely kind of was the final deciding factor, in my opinion, was that Strife is and remains and is becoming more and more of a cheese gun because of his energy damage mechanic and gaining these charges. As we saw in 7.2, there were like 7-8 paths where he could completely destroy them, and he was a very healthy alternative to, let's say, Ghost or whoever in all of the energy adoption paths. And these paths have been present in every single chapter pretty much since 6.3. So those nodes are here to stay. And he's one of the guys that abuses them the best. In fact, I'm probably gonna record a video later today just to emphasize that point. But all that being said, Havok takes spot number 10. Again, if you're displeased with that, that is perfectly fine. This is where I currently stand, and as I said, he could have very well easily been replaced by any of the champions I mentioned, such as Storm Pyramid X or Sunspot or whoever. I suppose I saw them that close that in this case my personal preference maybe snuck in a bit. Moving on to spot number 9. And spot number 9 currently is going to go to White Magneto. And White Magneto is a champion that I personally value higher than most, and I definitely plan to take him up to rank 3 in nearby future as well. The ability to let your teammates have that passive stun that can be shrugged off by tenacity and a whole bunch of other nodes is extremely useful, and we can see that White Magneto is de facto a standard Alliance War offensive tool these days, where at least 1 or 2 people per bot group pretty much always bring in this guy. Top of that, the rest of his synergies are immensely useful, whether those would be with Guardian, whether those would be with Colossus, Professor X, or whoever, and then obviously his own unique synergy enhancing hero and metal champions. On top of that, he keeps many of the features that makes Red Magneto as great as he is. And obviously, the fact that Red Magneto exists hurts this guy's prestige, because most people, given the choice, will always go with the Red Magneto. But I personally happen to believe that you should have access to both, and you should have ranked up both of these champions, because team building can be extremely tricky, and you might not necessarily always have space for both of the Magnetos on your team. And more often than not, if Red Magneto can do the fight, White Magneto probably can do it. Maybe not as well, maybe not as quick, but he will be quite good in plenty of scenarios right there. So I do think that White Magneto still remains to be sort of slept on. I do think that more and more people are waking up to how good this guy is. I, for one, have not regretted taking this guy to rank 2 for a second, and if it wouldn't be for the insane drought of tier 4 class catalysts for mutants, specifically on my account, he would be going up to rank 3 pretty much imminently. My next rank 3 is going to be another champion mentioned on this list, which is going to be Cable. And after Cable, I think White Magneto is next in line to go up to rank 3. So that kind of lets you know about my dedication and belief in this champion. And moving on to the list now, another champion that has never really been my favorite, and he is definitely more popular than he should be because of his prestige. He is one of the top 5 prestige champions in the game, and I believe a significant proportion of people who have ranked up Namor have done it because of prestige. However, he also is one of the more useful prestige champions, and there is no denying that. And recently, Namor has been making sort of a comeback. He has been one of the MVPs in Grandmaster's Gauntlet, being able to deal with that Korg, being able to deal with Terrax, and handling a couple of other fights. He has been one of the go-to champions for a couple of paths in 7.2, just so you can easily play around stuff like Taunts, just so you can easily play around stuff like Flare, for instance. You can reflect the Flare damage back whilst having the massive attack bonus yourself. And yeah, he has been putting in work 100% without doubt. And I'm still not the biggest fan of the character itself, but even I have to admit that I have been starting to use him more often. As I mentioned, even though I didn't use him in Grandmaster's Gauntlet, I used him plenty in 7.2. I've actually been using him in Alliance Quest fair amount as well, because he's one of those mutants that works very well with and without suicides, doesn't require synergy team, and can put in a decent amount of work. Obviously, standard disclaimer there that he needs to be max sig pretty much. But I think that's pretty much common knowledge at this point. Right, moving up past Namor, a champion that sucks. A champion that has been in the game forever, has not been buffed, has not been changed. And obviously, up until the release of Apocalypse, he had not even a ghost of a chance to appear on top 10 mutant list. However, here we are. It's Cable. And even though his situation is very similar to, let's say, Abomination, where Abomination is a good champion now, but solely because of the Guardian synergy, so is Cable, solely because of the fact that Apocalypse exists in the game. That also gives us one of the bigger conundrums, and something that I had to theorize myself. Do I want to rank up my Cable? And the first thing was, the first excuse or the first reason not to was because I didn't have a 6-star Apocalypse. I wasn't going to rank up 6-star Cable if I'm going to rely on a lower star level, lower power level champion to make him good. Because that would imply eventually, when, let's say, if I don't pull Apocalypse, I'm going to have 6-star rank 4 champions, and I'm going to have to bring in a 5-star just in order to fuel this guy. And that was not something that I feel comfortable with. When it comes to deciding your rank ups, I personally believe you should always prioritize Apocalypse in this kind of duo scenario, because Apocalypse can work extremely well without Cable. Cable cannot work without Apocalypse. All that being said, the situation that I compared this to was Abomination, but it is different. Why it is different? Because Cable becomes better than Abomination becomes with the Apocalypse synergy to begin with, and Apocalypse is better champion than Red Guardian. So it means quite frequently you want to use Apocalypse, and you're not going to look at it as a drag that you have to have Apocalypse on your team. And Cable has been putting in work in every single piece of content. I've seen Cables with Apocalypse in Alliance Quest. I've seen these guys in Alliance War. Definitely see them in Grandmaster's Gauntlet in 7.2, so there's no reason not to include Cable on this list anymore. Now, Cable currently is rank 2, and as I mentioned, my next rank up. In fact, I might be trying to take him up today later, because it is level up on, and I'm only like 1.5 mutant tier 4 class catalyst short, so Cable will probably go up to rank 3 quite soon, because I have been super happy with him at rank 2. Now, there are several cheese options that are available for Cable if he has been made a Horseman of Apocalypse, but that is the coolest thing. You don't have to do that. And most of the times, in fact, I think it is a bit of a waste to make Cable, because he really just needs that synergy. It really just needs that ability to stack those degens, and that is just about it. Everything else that you Cable gains from becoming Horseman obviously is useful, but when it comes to Apocalypse itself, and I'm going to mention it later again, is I don't really like making Champions Horseman. I just value Apocalypse's 4 charges and having his max ramp up a bit too much. That being said, yes, Cable is in spot number 7. I don't think he will ever break in like top 5 or whatever mutant list. As I mentioned, top 6 is where the biggest power gap comes, but he's doing as well as anybody could expect a champion that entirely relies on synergy to become good. So let's just give it up for Cable, a bit of a beast now, and one of the latest trends. Right, moving on to spot number 6, and as I mentioned, spot number 6 in this case is not an insult. Just like I said that I think there was a very tiny gap for all of these, I don't know, 8 champions that I mentioned before I named Havok as 10th. I also think that you can more or less freely arrange champions from spot number 6 to spot number 1. Based on your experience, based on your preference, based on how you play the game, what mastery setups you use, what champions you have and haven't ranked, so on and so forth. In this case, I do not want people to look at spot number 6 as a negative. Spot number 6 is 100% my acknowledgement of the fact that these champions are amazing. Every single one of them has a significant role to play in at least a couple of sections in the game. And every single one of them can put in a ton of work for anyone's account. But spot number 6, perhaps shockingly, is going to go to Omega Red. And Omega Red, for quite a long time, was touted as the best mutant, and I'm sure that there are people who think he is the best mutant right now as well. But I cannot deny that, as far as I can tell, the relevance of Omega Red has fallen quite significantly. And part of the reason is because he doesn't really inhibit most of the mutant qualities and abilities, which initially was the thing that made him so good. But right now, it potentially hinders him more than it helps him. For instance, if you consider making him a horseman. So he's not going to take bleed damage. He never really took bleed damage. He's going to have a prowess. Pitiful amount of damage comes from his special attacks compared to his spore damage. His increased ability accuracy, it doesn't matter, all of his abilities proc guaranteed anyways. So you guys see what I'm getting at. Compared to all of the other top mutants and some of the mutants below him, it doesn't really get any help from all of the wonderful enhancements that have been given to the mutant class by White Magneto, by Professor X, by Apocalypse. That being said, he is the most potent Alliance War mutant. Without a doubt, he was the most popular Alliance War mutant for a significant amount of time, and he definitely has a ton of uses. There are several things that make using Omega Red somewhat finicky. He is a SIG 200 champion. For instance, I have a 6-star rank 1 Omega Red at SIG 20, and I can't rank him up. Why? Because I can't SIG him up. Or if I did, then I would have taken a huge hit on my prestige, which at my level of play is quite important. But if you have committed to Omega Red, that is perfectly fine. Obviously, I'm just saying that there is a definite 100% need for a high signature level. Also, you are playing 2 different champions, whether you run Liquid Courage and Double Edge or you don't. So Omega Red is only that beastie, that amazing, if you do have Liquid Courage and Double Edge most importantly active. Top of that, he's another champion that pretty much never leaves the house without a synergy partner. Just like Cable, but at the very least here, he is the leading force. However, when you compare all the top mutant duos, then involving Sabretooth as your synergy piece, it's the weakest champion. If Cable demands Apocalypse or Apocalypse demands Cable, whichever way you look at it, both of those champions become studs. If, let's say, Omega Red demands Sabretooth, it's not so much the case. And I'm gonna speak about that a bit further, but that is very important. Overall, I do think he's a phenomenal champion. Overall, I am 100% convinced that I will eventually rank up my 6-star as well, because I do see a ton of value in him. All I'm saying right now is that I'm definitely not seeing him valuable enough to rush him over other champions or my prestige decisions, which are things that I have done for some other champions. So Omega Red is insane, great. I don't want to hear a single comment saying, oh, you don't understand or underestimate Omega Red. No, I have seen firsthand how useful he is. I used Omega Red plenty myself as well. I have done an entire labyrinth path with Omega Red, even though that's not the type of content he's great for, just to kind of like show that he is viable and good for long fights as well, not just the short ones, but then it becomes a completely different game. However, all the things put together, this is where he lands for me. And again, keep in mind, 6th spot to 1st spot, there isn't a huge difference. Right, let's move on to spot number 5. And spot number 5 is one of the newer stars. Spot number 5 also has significant skill gap, but we cannot deny the effects this guy's coming. First of all, he's a synergy champion. There's no denying that. He makes everybody in Mutant Class better. He makes all of the mutants better, and all of the X-Men better. He has a ton of useful synergies for a ton of great champions, and it's worth having him ranked up just because of synergies, even if he was mediocre champion himself. That being said, there have been a group of extremely skilled people who have showcased just exactly how good he is. He's one of the better Abyss options in many cases for a ton of fights. He was one of the MVPs for a ton of people in Grandmaster's Gauntlet. And I do believe the more time passes, the more people learn how to play this guy efficiently and properly, the more useful he will get. Now, there are a couple of downsides. He's fairly flimsy compared, and for instance, the biggest thing that I personally dislike about the character, but it's a small nitpick relatively, is the fact that, ironically, he's pretty much the most suicide-unfriendly mutant. But he makes every other mutant compatible with suicide, so that leaves to plenty of annoying mastery decisions, so to speak, or changes of mastery mid-runs, which hopefully will get sorted once we get mastery presets, and that will be much less of a downside. But currently it is just extremely infuriating to be forced to make a lot of sacrifices, or to be forced to just go through the annoying process of switching masteries mid-path or mid-run. But overall, I think you have seen, all of you guys have seen a ton of clips where Professor X just absolutely demolishes fights. I have done some insane Labyrinth of Legends runs with Professor X for fun as well, with mutant power boosts where you take down 1.5 million opponent with like one set of special attacks. You just charge up to your level 3 and that is done. Start spamming special attacks, and by the time you're done, opponent is down. We have seen him used in Abyss a ton. I have had my go with him in Abyss as well, and I did solo Korg once, and I did some other not too bad fights, but I definitely have my ways to go when it comes to learning how to use him the best. However, I can definitely already see the immense impact this guy's having on the game overall. So that's why he takes spot number 5. Spot number 4 is a champion that I would personally place higher, but I can't deny that unfortunately he is not as popular as I'd like and believe him to be. And that is Colossus. And there's gonna be people crying in the corner for sure immediately, saying that Colossus is not better than Professor X. Colossus is not better than Omega Red. I do believe he is. We can compare him to Omega Red. Let's compare in any aspect that matters. Can Colossus be used with and without suicides? Yes. Is it losing or changing much in his ability to clear content? No, not really. Can Omega Red say the same? Not really. Can Professor X say the same? Not really. Is there an important synergy partner for Professor X and for Omega Red and for Colossus? Yes. So for Omega Red it is Sabretooth. Not a bad champion, but mad champion. For Professor X, it mainly is White Magneto. Very useful champion, but not as good as Omega Red, which is Colossus's synergy partner. So Colossus takes the better synergy depending champion, I suppose. Even though, just like Professor X, Colossus can still be used very effectively without synergy as well. You do bring your damage down substantially, but even without any synergies, Colossus's damage is still way above average. Are there plenty of cheese factors to Colossus? Yes. Setting him up correctly can let you infinitely stunlock opponents. You can use Colossus to cheese the same energy adoption path as you can use Havok for instance. There are plenty of other circumstances where Colossus is just absolutely brutally insane. And even though I must concede the fact that Colossus is not the most used Alliance Quest or Alliance War champion, he does see plenty of play in Alliance Quest and Alliance War as well. To a similar level, let's say to Alliance Quest, then I don't know, actually he probably sees more play in Alliance Quest than Professor X and Omega does. But anyhow, this is where I stand with Colossus. I still value him immensely, and if it was my personal list, in fact, I'd probably put him in second place. But right now he sleeps in fourth, because I am trying my best to juggle here how frequently and how dominantly these champions appear, not only in questing content, but also in competitive Alliance War and competitive Alliance Quest and everywhere else. All that being said, Colossus still putting in a ton of work in vast majority of the game modes. Anybody who has given this guy a chance, I have not heard a single person regret that. So if you still have your reservations, and I believe that there are people who have their reservations about Colossus, take a leap of faith. Trust me, you will not regret it. And as I said, if it would be solely up to my own impressions of the game and value of the characters, I would place him even higher. Probably in second or first spot. But this isn't a list of my favorites. Therefore, moving on to spot number 3. In spot number 3, I'm going to pass to APOC. Now, APOC, I can't deny the fact that I underestimated the character initially, and I will not try to make excuse for myself. However, I will say that largely it was down to the misleadingly underwhelming deep dive showcase videos, because the numbers there did look quite pathetic, and that is part of Apocalypse's well, only real drawback as well, or only a couple of problems with Apocalypse. It does really rely on setup. His damage output and his capabilities drastically change based on the amount of mutants you have on your team, based on the amount of prowesses he gets on his persistent charges, and whether he has some synergies with him or not. But overall, once again, I can't deny the fact that he is in fact used in Alliance Quest, but most people find him too valuable to use him in Alliance Quest because they are busy putting him in Alliance War defense or using him in Alliance War offense, where he is becoming one of the more popular mutant champions. Top of that, he has done extremely well in pretty much any content. He's a great champion in Abyss, especially if you bring Strife along. And ironically, that is also one of the funnier things about Strife, when you bring Strife on your team with Apocalypse, which you kind of have to do. I think Apocalypse is the more capable Abyss clearing option compared to Strife. So, anyways, Apocalypse is extremely capable in long-term content as well. I have done about 3 or 4 Labyrinth runs, and I definitely look forward to bringing this guy in Abyss as well in nearby future. Top of that, he is one of the MVPs for most of the questing content in 7.1, 7.2. He is definitely being used in Grandmaster's Gauntlet as well. And there's not much to dislike about the character. I think one of the coolest things about him, by the way, and one of the more unique ones that's becoming more and more important, is that immunity to Disorient. Because Disorient can be annoying with the defensive ability accuracy reduction, but the most important thing is the insane block damage you end up taking. And when he goes immune to Disorient, he just makes those fights so much easier. So that is quite important. I think the Incinerate immunity is kind of the most useless one out of the three, by the way, because typically when you take Incinerate damage, you want to be pretty much flat out immune. Bleed immunity has been helped a lot by the fact that you can start the fight bleeding by yourself with double edge mastery and just become immune immediately, pretty much. And disorient immunity, yes, you don't take damage from disorient. Anyhow, back to the main point. I think Apocalypse currently is the third best mutant champion in the game. His impact on the game is huge with his ability to make horsemen, which I do not find as potent as most people probably do, but his synergies certainly are helpful. And then he himself as a champion is great. The bigger annoying things that I don't like about him is how his immunities work, especially in case of Incinerate, how he slowly starts preventing evade, because in many cases it's just far too little, far too late. If opponent evades, they can just knock you out. But access to weakness, poison, degeneration, and concussion, and having a potent concussion permanently on the opponent is great. Also bleed on top of all of that. And yeah, just a beefcake of a champion that's becoming more and more relevant. Right, let's move on swiftly to spot number 2. I'm not gonna talk too much about Magneto. Magneto is a champion that I have placed in second spot. I do find him extremely valuable, and it is undeniable that he himself immediately has approached the difficulty levels of opponents. How people place Alliance War defense highly depends on existence of this champion when metal defenders are just being bullied left, right, and center. He has put in work in pretty much every single game mode. He is one of the better options for a ton of fights in Abyss now. He is one of the options for Grandmaster's Gauntlet. He is one of the dominant champions in Alliance War, and he makes you feel safe whilst you use him. And there's just ton to like him. The thing that I don't like personally about Magneto is his playstyle, and that there's something very annoying and tedious about that extended heavy charging thing and stuff like that. So I'm not going to say that he has the most fun or exciting playstyle, but the numbers are fun, and I suppose that kind of makes up for it. Magneto is not a champion that I necessarily want to use in a fight or when I just randomly quest, but Magneto is definitely a champion that I'm always aware of, and I always want to have access to. And yeah, he's just a beast. There's no way around it. Do think that Kabam is probably going to avoid metal characters or going to start countering Magneto in some way, shape, form, or fashion, because yeah, he just invalidates so many potent defenders by himself, and he puts in crazy amount of work. Coincidentally, it was up to me, I'd probably swap the place of Colossus and Magneto, whatever. Anyways, Magneto is awesome and definitely is used pretty much everywhere in the game. And top spot, perhaps unexpectedly, goes to Archangel. Now, Archangel has always been a mutant champion that has hovered in the top tiers of the mutant class, but I don't think anybody has ever really placed him in the first place. And, well, I'm going to do it. And the reason for it is quite simple. Every single piece of content is always one of the best options for. The one argument that everybody uses against Archangel is, oh yeah, well, if opponents bleed immune, then he sucks. Well, here is the wake-up call. Every champion has plenty of opponents that they suck against. Not gonna use Human Torch against Havok, because you can die from detonation damage. You're not gonna use Ghost, I don't know, against most of the Cosmic Champions. You're not gonna use Ghost against Terex, because you're gonna get armor broken and get smacked in the face. You're not going to use Magneto against Human Torch, because Human Torch is gonna melt the living daylights out of you. Every champion has plenty of matchups these days that they can't do. What really matters is the amount of hard fights that they can do, which is the reason why we all value Ghost so highly. Slowly but surely over time, Archangel has increased the amount of hard fights and hard matchups that he can do. His ability to shut down nodes increases his ability to do the fights that many other champions cannot. And Archangel, not being the most complex champions, is one of the most effective champions. If you still disagree with me, look at the guy's track record. Archangel is MVP for any variant where he can be used, even barely used. He's one of the variants for XL. He's one of the MVPs for XL variant. He's one of the MVPs for the latest variant 7, where you could use him in Mutant Class, because he was the cheese god in that variant, right? He was my personal MVP in 7.2, or one of my personal MVPs, to a point where I often brought 2 Archangels in a fight. He definitely is used loads in Alliance War these days, because he just works around so much different stuff. And again, as this game grows and as this game gets more complex, I think the value of Archangel has been steadily rising over time. Because 3-4 years back, even 2 years back, we were looking for champions who can do every single fight the best and the fastest. We're not doing that anymore. We're looking for champions that are going to help us in the most amount of content against the most hard opponents. Want me to make another case in point? Everybody is crying about Blade Boss and Cavalier and uncollected difficulties, how hard and how tricky it is. If you bring in Archangel, you wouldn't even realize that that fight is tricky. Turns potentially stopping fight, potentially clutch fight that would force you to quit out the quest or use ton of revives. Something that just disappears without notice. And that's why he's the first one. He does not only do arguably one of the largest amount of hard fights, but he does them effortlessly. So long as you can use Archangel, pawns are dead. There's no ifs, no buts, no whatabouts. Similar to a Quake, where you just bring pretty much every single fight down a notch in the level of difficulty. And even the hardest fights become as difficult as a regular arena fight. And that is very, very distinguishing factor. Whereas you can use Omega Red in plenty of tricky fights, you need to be really, really good Omega Red player. Whereas you can use Magneto against many different node combinations and trying to work around them, and like people doing Gauntlet against Apocalypse and Dragon Man and plenty of other stuff. But with the Archangel is, if he works, the fight's not hard. If he works, the fight melts down. And he works so often that, yeah, he's definitely one of my most used and relied champions. So right now, I think finally, for this time, mainly based on the fact that every single piece of content, years throughout years, this guy has been present. He might not be the best Abyss option, but he was always one of the options for some of the hardest fights like Magic and Electro. He might not be the best, Labyrinth option. He might not be the best Abyss option, but he's always one of the options for plenty of fights there as well. But when it comes to Grandmaster's Gauntlet, he's definitely in the pretty much must-have on the team list. When it comes to Alliance War, he's one of the must-have answers for any self-respecting Alliance War offensive team. And I have talked my way out of my mobile screen's wake-up time. That means that this is going to be it as well. I know this video is long, but it kind of really had to be, because all of these champions demand respect and recognition. And once again, Mutant Class at the moment is so jacked that it is almost impossible to rank them to everybody's liking. Everybody has their favorites. Everybody has their own opinions. You have heard mine and the reasonings for it. If you disagree with me, please remain civil and remember that that is just what it is. It's the way I perceive the game and the way I think. There's no need to be malicious in the defense of the champions that you love. Trust me, I love them as well. But that is it for now. That means there's just one thing remaining. It's to smash together all of these 6 class lists and come up with top list in the game. That being said, I'm going to catch you guys later. See ya. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the